From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So today, not only do I have a personal friend, we've been to a lot of events together, and we've actually had some groups that I've seen him speak, I've heard him speak, and I can tell you, you're in for a treat today. Because if you're in sales, if you do anything that involves customers, which is all of us, by the way, if you have a relationship, you're married, you're dating someone, you have kids, this is going to be for you. Brian Galke is actually what I would say the facial recognition expert. And we're going to go through his journey over 14 years ago, how he embarked on this. But why this is important for you and why you should stay tuned in is every day you have someone that you're talking to. Someone is reading you. Hopefully, you're giving off the right signals and the right signs of what's there. This is going to teach you and equip you to be your best and also recognize that in other people. So I'm fascinated. I'm curious. I want to dive right into this because I want to understand this more. As he's spoken, it's one of those, I take notes and I leave and I realize I don't know all the things I need to know. So we're going to have some fun with it. Brian, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, so SubtleSkills, you got that going on. Mm-hmm. You're touring, you're speaking everywhere. I mean, right. I literally feel like lately you pop up from all of our friends, you know, from Renee to Sims and all these guys, speaking at Jim Morris's event here in Nashville,
right?
Which brought you in. But I want to go back because people are probably like, hold up. Facial recognition expert. You do all these things. You've studied this. You showed me your flashcard. You showed me your book. Why did you even get into this?
Fluke circumstance. A friend came in from out of town. I live in Dallas, Texas, and she was in for a trade show. And she's like, let's go to dinner. I said, okay. I show up at the restaurant. She calls, says, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, oh, great. She's like, no, you need to come over here and meet this guy. I said, why do I need to meet this guy? She goes, he reads faces. And I go, there's no way in the world. Look, I've got an entire shelf full of body language books, how to win friends and influence people, everything on sales because I'm an introvert by nature. And I've never heard of this. So this guy's got to be a fraud. And she's like, well, come on over. And I said, no, because I'd already sat down at the restaurant. She finally convinced me to go, but I went with the agenda to prove this guy was a fake. And so I thought he's going to do generic things like say, oh, you've had a hard time in life. Well, who hasn't? Yeah. So I was over there just preparing to tear this guy apart because he ruined my dinner plans. And he won me over because he's just the nicest guy. His name's Mac Fulfer. He was an attorney who learned it for jury consulting and ended up leaving law to teach us around the world. And it goes all the way back to the Greeks. Aristotle was involved with it, you name it. It was actually part of the academic system until Henry VIII had it removed because he said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. Yeah.
How cool is that from history? I love those stories.
Yes.
I've heard you share that before, and I wanted the audience to hear it because it frames up to me the entire conversation of this is not something new or some like trendy modern thing there where it goes, let's figure out how we can read people differently.
Right.
This is based on some history.
Yeah. So it was taught to authors and artists for character development. So if you think every book we ever read in school, there was only two ways to describe the characters, through their actions and through their facial features. Because men wore suits, women wore dresses, there wasn't much there. So authors and artists would take the same courses. And that's why when you go anywhere in the world, why do all villains look the same? Why do all heroes look the same? We can turn on a Disney movie because we both have kids and you know who's the hero and who's the villain. Now they change over time, like with Megamind, but he's got all the villain features. Now later he becomes something else. But look at Gru, right? Like all the villains look the same. That's the reason why.
Oh, dude, I love that. And by the way, our kids love Megamind. We've watched that so many times. You said that, I'm like,
number 2's coming out.
I know. We're gearing up for it. And I was thinking, as you shared that too, as you watch Disney and we watch all these movies,
yes, it
is very categorized. You can tell very quickly of what's there.
Right.
And I love that because it makes the movie easy to jump into.
Yes.
And as you go, I want to back up though. When you were learning this and you're going, okay, I'm going to disprove this. What was the one thing that stood out that said, okay, maybe there's something to it. I'm gonna look at this.
I took the book. Here's what I do is I cheat, and I don't have a book of my own. I'm working on one right now, but I would take my mentor's book and I'd lay it out when I was traveling for work. So I used to sell technology to jails and prisons. So I was traveling all over the U.S. and I'd leave the book out. And somebody naturally asked a question, well, what is that? And I said, well, I took this course and I kind of think this guy's full of crap. Can we look at your face and tell you what it says? And it was not 100%, but it was high 90s everywhere I went. And what I found was when you teach people about themselves, they feel seen and heard. And when people feel seen and heard, it changes their life. You know Brian Bogert?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Brian always talks about the 4 basic needs are physical safety, emotional safety. People want to feel seen and heard, and people want to feel connected. Well, seen and heard and connected, when you're looking at someone and you're giving them your time and attention, it's a lost art because this day and age, everybody's like, yeah, okay, cool. And yep, let me just get on my phone, And so when you start to do this, like I mentioned, I'm an introvert by nature. So last night I walked around and I'm energized by being around people, but I don't talk to a lot of people. Yeah. But what I was doing is like, even when I look at eyebrows lead to eye contact, and you get credit for making eye contact. And then people feel, oh my gosh, they're paying attention to me. And that's what really helped me overall. So I'm like, okay, there's something to this. So I would learn one feature and I'd go and test it out. Then I'd learn another one. And then as I got better, I would actually start telling people what I did. But the reason the company's called SubtleSkills is I didn't tell people for the longest time what I was doing because I wanted to test it. And when you tell people you read faces, everybody looks at you like, okay.
Don't look at me.
Exactly. They never want to make eye contact with you. And they're just as skeptical as I was. And I love skeptics, but I want curious skeptics. And what I mean is you can be skeptical all day long, but dig into it and then make a decision. And that's what I did. As I thought, there's no way in the world. But as I kept digging into it, more and more stuff was true. And so I would start using it, but I wasn't telling my coworkers or anybody what I was doing, but we were winning more business. So much so that I went from an introvert on the help desk to being part of what they called the pro demo team, which was me and 2 other people were flown around the U.S. to go to any customer over $1 million and do presentations. Wow. And I was doing the phone system side and, the PowerPoints and stuff. But what I wasn't telling anybody is I was looking at people and figuring out, okay, I know what I want to say, but how would you best understand it? And so I look for things like who's auditory, who's visual, do they want to hear about the downside of things? Do they want to hear about the features and benefits? And everyone's face tells you how to talk to them, but we haven't been formally taught.
Dude, that's so cool. Why do you think this is so important for people that are listening out there and they're like, okay, this is cool. Like maybe I'll buy into this a little bit, right? But like, Brian, how is this even going to correlate over? They're always thinking about what's the result they get from it. What have you seen and why should someone want to learn this?
Sure. Well, the number one reason is we do more things over Zoom right now than we have anything else. So as much as I love body language, we know Renee, Janine Driver. I love Joe Navarro's books. Yeah. I recommend all those in my keynotes. But over Zoom, that can't help you. But everybody's got a face. And the number one skill, this was the big game changer for me. It's proactive because I can go and look you up on LinkedIn, on social media ahead of time. And I start thinking, how do I need to change the presentation for you? And people can tell when it's a canned presentation or if it's a custom presentation. And that's the big difference is, I'll give you the example. In 2021, I went to go speak at Steve Sims' event. And I was nervous going in to do it. So I said, hey, add me to the Facebook group. And as people say, hey, I'm so excited to be in San Diego, I would go look at them. And I would draw, I'll show you an example when we're out of here, but I draw arrows to all the features that stand out on somebody's face. And I think, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? And I'm sitting in the back going over it. And the reason I did it is because being the introvert, and I didn't know anybody, I'm coming into this closed community. But once I've looked him up and I've kind of researched him, I felt like I knew him. Mm. And so when I got up, somebody saw me with all the arrows at people's faces, and they're like, man, I thought you were a serial killer. I didn't know what you were doing. But I went to one of the events the night before, and I found 2 people, a married couple. It was Matt and his wife. And I just walked up to him and I started talking. And because I felt like I knew him, they're like, oh, is this your second or third one? I'm like, no, it's my first one. But it helped me with my anxiety.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So I want to dive down that further because I love that we're still doing a lot of Zooms, right? Mm-hmm. We're remote all across the country and all these states. And I think about that too, is whether somebody's looking to join our team or I'm going to have a meeting with somebody, to be able to look them up proactively.
Yes.
And I'm sure people are thinking maybe what I'm thinking is, can this be learned? And is this something that they, because I know you spent a lot of years, but could someone else learn that enough to where, how long does it take them to go implement this, to do these things?
So people can walk right out of a presentation I give. So the first thing I teach in classes, in like, let's say a keynote, is eyebrow height and eyebrow shape. And the reason why is because you can do it from across the room. And even if you go to a networking event, as somebody's walking towards you, you just think, are their eyebrows high or are they low? And what are the 3 basic shapes? Now I could talk about eyebrows for half a day, but that's enough that you can walk out and immediately start talking to somebody else. So I need to improve. I don't want to say I'm bad with names because I'm trying to rechange my language. I'm trying to improve on names in 2024. Who was the guy that was in here that helped us with the glasses? Jim. So what's funny is Jim has straight glasses and he has straight eyebrows. So for him, get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. You don't need to add a lot of fluff for people with straight eyebrows. So when somebody's walking from across the room, you can just think high or low and what shape are they? And then you just start changing. I know what I want to say, but how do I speak your language? And people go, oh, this is manipulation. Really? If you go to another country, and I demand that they speak English, is that respectful? No, because I used to do that when I was a kid. When I went, I'd be like, speak English, and if they didn't, I'd speak English louder. It doesn't work well. But we do that all the time because we don't mean to, but we look at things from only our perspective a lot of the time. When you take the time to look at someone and think just for a second, what do I need to say so I'm speaking their language? You're making it about the conversation versus about you.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads, and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. To set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. Now, listen to you say that. I would challenge anybody that's listening to this going, yet manipulation or these things there is, if someone speaks to you in the way that you want to be spoken to, whether you're more direct or you need the fluff and the feelings and the stories, like wherever you fit on that stuff, if they're speaking, they took time to understand you, and then you feel like that conversation was much more catered to you.
Yes.
Wouldn't you feel better about, one, their preparedness, number two, that they actually cared enough about you that they spoke your language? So I would challenge that, and I love you use gems because you're spot on.
Yeah.
Give me the others on the eyebrows. I know you could speak forever on this. So we got the straight ones, get straight to the point.
Yes.
What are our other big ones that
Let's
you'll
start
see?
with high and low, and because I love this. We talk about faces in our everyday language. So you hear about highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. Well, there's a reason for that. Highbrow humor is when somebody tells you a joke and it takes you a minute to think about the joke and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is like Jackass and Three Stooges. Immediately laugh. So people have higher eyebrows and need more time to process. It doesn't mean they're dumb. It just means that they're thinking, like, give me a little bit more time to think about this. People whose eyebrows are very close to their eyes make decisions fast. So if I walked into a room and their eyebrows are high, I know my presentation needs to be a little bit longer. If their eyebrows are like sitting on top of their eye, and to clarify, because I posted a video on social media, like, well, where else is their eyebrow supposed to be? I'm talking height, not location. The closer the eyebrow is to the eye, the faster they make decisions. So if I've got, let's take Brad Lee, for example. So Brad, if you've got 30 minutes on his calendar, you better get there in 3 minutes. And his eyebrow is very close to his eye. So when you see that with people, high eyebrow, just think of like speed bumps on the forehead, data racing down to get in their eye. The higher the eyebrow is, the slow, go over the speed bump and then speed back up. If it's low eyebrows like you have, race down there, get to the point as soon as possible. So that's what you first look at people, but that's why we have highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. So that's just when you look at someone, you go, okay, let's say, for example, because you have a lot of realtors, if you're trying to convince someone to let me represent you as the buyer or the seller, the higher the eyebrow, the more time they're going to need to make a decision. So maybe it's not a decision they're going to make today, or they're going to want more information. But if it's a low and I keep talking on and on, the longer I talk, the more I lose them. It's that simple of information. And we'll do this with the eyebrows too, just for your audience. So there's 3 basic shapes of eyebrows. Straight eyebrows, get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. What are you looking for? A 3.3, a 2.2? Square footage, what interest rate, what payment? Facts, figures, data. So imagine straight eyebrows, straight to the point. Angled eyebrows, like I have. What's my angle? Help me understand it so then I'm involved in the process. So if you see somebody with angled eyebrows, you're going to let them know, hey, once we list your house, these are the steps that's going to be involved. I'm going to need this information from you. Now, if it's the buyer side and they've got an angled eyebrow, then it is, what's most important to you in a house? Because it's about them first and then helping other people. So what's the most important thing for you in a house? What's the most important room? Now, the third one is a rounded eyebrow. So if you think a rounded eyebrow, in the book or the cards, it says curved, but that doesn't help you remember it. But a rounded eyebrow people, think about the people around them. So who are the spare bedrooms for? Oh, are you going to entertain people? Do you need a big kitchen? So I'm still selling a house, but based on their eyebrow, it's what I'm going to ask them about the house or listing the house.
I hope everybody goes back and writes those 3 down and then think about this. And I would even encourage them, and I'd love to get your take on this, is go find like 10 or 15 of your friends.
Yes.
And practice and try to like figure it out and go, are they like that? And then the next time you speak to them, I would love for you to expand on this, how to start implementing this. So now they got this kind of 3 eyebrows. They know what to do a little bit, know who they are. How do you go start to incorporate that in like everyday conversations?
You just start looking at people. So I say with the face comes grace. Things that used to drive me nuts about people, I look and I go, that's just the way they are. So I'm extremely visual. I'll hang up the phone and I'll say, okay, I'll see you later. So I use a lot of visual words. But if I'm looking at somebody who's more auditory, so how do you tell somebody's auditory or visual? It's in proportion to only their own face. In proportion to their whole face, are their eyes large or small? Are their ears large or small? So if somebody has larger ears and smaller eyes, I know they're auditory. So I'd say things like, hey, does this sound like a good idea? Do you hear where I'm coming from? So I make auditory phrases. If they're like me and they're visual, I'll say, hey, take a look at this. Hey, I'd really like to see what you think about this. So I'm saying, see what you think about this.
Yes.
And if they're here, like this is kinesthetic, a wide area right here. That is hands-on learners. So I'd say, hey, look, let's get up. Let's tackle this situation. Let's get running. Use movement words. So when you're talking to someone and see you're smiling because you're a kinesthetic person, I can tell what that
I can tell. I'm like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah. So that's how you figure it out. So once you see somebody do exactly what you just did, and that is smile, you've hit it. Now, if you look them up ahead of time, you're already going to know this going in. But for you, I would send things that use action words while we're talking. Once we hit the ground running, I can't wait to roll up our sleeves and go to work. I'm going to use a lot more that versus what I want to say, which is visual things. Now, everybody does marketing. Is your marketing inclusive of auditory phrases, visual phrases, and kinesthetic phrases? So that way you're speaking everyone's language. So we used to have to do these RFPs, requests for proposals for government documents, hundreds of pages long. And what I would do is I'd make sure we had all the different words in there. But I wasn't telling people what I was doing, but that's why I was doing it.
Oh, I love that. So that's how you can be inclusive. And I'm thinking this right now because, right, I mean, we're trying to get people to get a mortgage with us, right? Buy a home, do all these things. And you're right, like you have all these people will fit into all these. So when someone's marketing this, I love that you included all those in. What could that look like today, maybe on social? So I'm thinking about, because you want to be inclusive because you don't know which bucket they're fitting in at that point. And you're doing a little bit more broad. How can people start to include those words and those phrases into their social?
It's just adding it to your language. Because if let's talk about social media for a minute. You're going to want to use captions. And so when you're using your language, just make sure I'm adding in each one of those. Do I see something? Do I hear something? Am I moving something while you're talking? So most people will script something ahead of time, or they'll just put 3 little things and just go, okay, did I cover each one of those aspects? But you can also do it. You're going to have visuals anyway, because 70% of social media is watched on mute. So you want to have captions. Oh, yeah. If I'm extremely visual, so if you watch any of my content, I put in B-roll footage. And so I pop in pictures to keep my attention while I'm there as well. But you just say things while you're talking, hey, so great to see you, what I'm hearing this day and age, and, the thing we're going to be moving on to next. It's very simple. You just have to think about it.
I like that, though. And people don't realize, they probably start paying attention to it now. It's like the white car,
exactly.
And
the reticular activating system.
Yes. I think we had this yesterday with my daughter. We're driving back from a soccer game, and she saw a red car, and she's like, Dad, there's another red car. There's another red car. And kid you not, there were like 8 red cars within a minute.
Yes.
And I was like, honey, they were always there. And it was it was a learning opportunity to share. When you see something and you focus on it, you tend to see more of it.
Absolutely.
Right, as you go around. And so as you start looking at language, you're probably going to see some of this language that's used. And I love that you went that direction, because I think people are there. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because people hear you speak and they have all these things. I'd love to go the speaker route, because you've gotten on some stages with this, and you're pretty unique. I don't know anybody else that talks about this stuff. Like, people talk about body language and here's how you frame up your speeches and all this stuff. But you're talking about when you're looking out and you're a speaker, are you able to read people from the stage as well too, when you're looking out at the audience, so you can customize your message potentially? That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah, it is. When I was early on speaker, I would always look for people with rounded eyebrows. Why? Because they think about the people around them first. So I knew they were going to be my supporters. And I would see a majority of the time, they're the ones nodding and leaning in because they want to take care of others. So that helped me when I first got started. I'll share a funny story since we have a bottle of water here. When I first used to speak, I was nervous. And so I one time had a glass of water, and it was spilling out the sides. Like, that's how nervous I used to be, is I had to have bottled water instead of glasses of water. But I started looking, but yes. And here's the cool thing. They always say when you're making a message, you want to help one person. but there's a lot of people in the room. So when I'm talking to someone, I would look at the faces when I'm up there talking, but I knew when I hit certain key points, make eye contact with that person to help sink it in. And so, for example, let's talk about eye angles. So your eyes can angle down, or they can angle up, or they can angle in the middle. So there's 3 ones. So we'll go angled up first. When you see somebody whose eyes angle up, they want to hear about the features and the benefits. What's the positive side of things? So you think up, they want to hear the upside. So you talk about why it's the best thing ever. Once we get your house listed, it's going to go for this amount. These are all the pros. If it's down, it's, hey, look, we're going to put this on there. Sometimes things don't sell as fast. So, this is our contingency plan. If it doesn't work, this is what we're going to do. So if their eyes angle up, you talk about the features and the benefits and the wins. If their eyes angle down, they're worried about the downside. So it's not rose-colored glasses and negative Nancy. It's just how do they think in terms of taking in information. So I'm still pitching the same product, but I'm going to set, like, for example, when I used to sell technology, if their eyes angled down, and I would say, if it wasn't the first version of our product, say, this is not the first versions of our product. Here's the things that we learned in the past, and this is what our customers told us that help us improve the product. So what am I doing? I'm addressing the downsides they think about. I just spoke at Door-to-Door Con with Sam Taggart. Yeah. And solar is really big right now. So I asked, well, what's the number one problem that people are concerned about with having solar panels? And they said, damaging their roof. Well, if you see somebody's eyes who angle down, then you can say, I know a big concern that a lot of people have is, we're going to get this on and we're going to damage your roof. This is what our team does to go to learn how to install this properly to keep the integrity of your roof intact while you're benefiting from this solution. Still selling the same thing.
I love that you're going through the eyes too, because if you're talking about the eyes and the ears, I'm starting to think, I got eyebrows, I got eyes, I got this, I got mouth and all this. What should we start to look for next? Do you start at the eyebrows?
So I read people top to bottom, left to right.
You do?
Like there's entire things, like forehead's a thing. I don't focus on ears other than height, because even though people want to talk about the inner parts of the ear, when is the last time you looked at the side of somebody's head? Right?
Hopefully not. It's
Exactly.
Not where he's focused.
Yeah. So I go forehead. I do look to see if it's rounded. Those are outside the box thinkers. If it's straight up and down, they're linear thinkers, one step at a time. If their head angles back a little bit, they can easily repeat what they've seen done once. So imagine like data just kind of lands on their forehead and sticks there.
Yes.
So I can look at people and go, okay, outside the box thinkers, so you have a rounded forehead, is I don't want to tell you how you have to do it this way. I'm going to say, this is how people do it, and I'm going to let you put your own spin on it.
Yeah.
People who have a straight up and down, they want to be told each step to go through one by one. They love standard operating procedures and things. Yes. So the next part I go is not just eyebrows, but does it have a brow ridge? Yes or no. Then I look at eyelid. Do they have a lot of eyelid? Yes or no. When you're talking to someone, this is a micro expression. If you're talking to someone, their lower eyelid's rounded, then they're open to hearing what you say. But while you're talking, if it suddenly goes straight, that's the equivalent of when we were kids going like this. They're trying to shut you out. So it's a micro expression that you can watch when you're talking to somebody. You're still making eye contact, but you can think, oh crap, I just flatlined. Something I said or did, they have an issue with, but they're not telling me. So what you can say, so you can go, it just seems like something about what I just said isn't sitting right. What would you like to know more about? And you're giving them that opportunity, because a lot of people are chicken, especially if they're going to pay you for a service. They're going to expect you to have all the answers. And when you don't, they start leaning back. And so we notice if somebody leans back, we notice if somebody crosses their arms. Yeah. But nobody can control their eyelid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking through all these conversations we have, and I'm watching you, and I'm like, hold on, he's reading me, and he's watching me, and like you start overthinking this a little bit, right, to where you're there. But to your point, this isn't something that can really be faked. When someone is your facial stuff, I feel like is almost trained. Like, like I smile when I smile, like, and when you were reading me a minute ago about some of that, like, oh, I sense that your rounded face, or like the auditory thing, and then you go this way, and this is how you want. I'm like, yeah, that's how I'd want somebody to communicate to me. It's like, right, let's move the train, let's get to it.
Yes, and that's what everybody's face tells us how to talk to them. We just haven't been formally taught. Like I mentioned, it used to be part of the education system. Even though it was removed, every book we ever read, there wasn't pictures of every character. So if you think about it, you go back through all the books that were required reading in school, we kind of got an idea of who people are. It's also why, a lot of times casting agents are great about picking who should be a character, but you can tell if they're putting in a celebrity versus who looks like the character in the book. And that's why a lot of times we don't like the movie, because who we read about and who we pictured in our head is not the person on screen. Oh.
Any examples of that you think of? That?
No. Well, let's say if we were watching Star Trek and Spock had rounded eyebrows, would you watch it?
Yeah, it wouldn't be as cool.
Right. But what's Spock known for? logic, data. What does he have? A straight eyebrow. And that's all he has, right? And people get confused because it's angled like this, but he doesn't have the 45 or 90 degree turn in it. And so it's still a straight eyebrow, even though it angles up.
Yeah.
So if you think about, especially sci-fi movies, they add on a lot of things to people's faces for the character. So again, Spock, eyebrow. You look Klingons, you name it, whatever it is. And you can go Star Wars, Star Trek. They put a lot of villains have angled features. So I have angled eyebrows. Is that a bad thing? No. Angled eyebrows is what's my angle? Help me understand it. But an angled eyebrow plus a downturned nose plus a pointed chin, that looks like every devil and witch you've ever seen. So is it something I'd pay attention to? Yeah. Wow. But and here's what people get. Oh, this is judgment. No, this is about learning to understand people. Judgment would be, I'm never going to talk to you again because you have this facial feature. No, I'm looking to understand and go, how can I talk to you because of your facial feature?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't write people off. I think about disc profiles and Enneagram tests, all these things. It's like, but once you know somebody with these tests, isn't it great? Our daughter, and I'll use her again because we've been going through this college prep and all this, but she took the disc profile for the first time. And I will tell you what was really eye-opening to me is she started to own who she was. And I wasn't surprised. I was a little surprised about how high the I was. And I'm like, this is our daughter. I'm going, is she really this outgoing? And she tells me these things are happening. I'm going, this her. But when you start to own your identity and you go, okay, this is who I am. This is what my eyebrows, this is what it is about me. And you start to understand who you are. I find, well, then you can just step into that. And then people can speak to you and interact with you accordingly. So there's no manipulation to it when you go, that's who you are. You have likes, dislikes, certain tendencies. What's been the thing in the last, let's just say this year, that you've learned maybe new within this realm? Because I know you speak and talk on this a lot.
So like you, I'm always picking up new books and talking to new people. Here's the best part about being a speaker. I get to listen to other speakers. So I'm constantly learning. We have a friend, Renee, and we spoke together in Vegas last year. And he went on before me. I'm like, I don't want to have to follow Renee. Like, he's just awesome. But I always learn something new with body language. There is a great book right now. It's written a while ago, but I just finished reading it, called The Like Switch. So like light switch, but like switch. And they say, if you want to be seen as approachable when you walk into a room, as soon as you walk in, raise your eyebrows up, turn your head and smile. That's what they taught FBI agents to learn to flip people to spy against their own country. So the book was written by an FBI behavioral analysis expert, and he was teaching agents how do they basically come in and work with someone, because they don't just walk up and go, you want to spy on your country?
Yeah.
So that was the first thing they did. And what they taught us is it goes back to when a stranger entered our tribe, our community, whatever you want to call it, we first looked at eyes for intent. So if their eyebrows are raised up, it's like, hey. But if they walked in like this, they're scanning to look and see. They may hurt me. So are you friendly or are you foe? Ooh. And that's why if you need glasses and you don't get glasses, you can come off as a foe. And before I had PRK done, I would squint all the time. People are like, why are you so angry? I'm like, I'm not. But I didn't realize for years I was doing that to myself. So you're constantly learning stuff. A big realization I had is a big question everybody always asks is, well, what about plastic surgery? And I said, well, yes, plastic surgery will change how people treat you. But let's take women, for example. They spend an hour in front of a mirror to highlight what they want people to look at for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. So it's no different. Since you have kids and I have kids, when my daughter had her face painted one time like a tiger, she went around and went, rah, and everybody's like, oh, a tiger. Women do that every day with their makeup. And that was the big epiphany I had, is like, women highlight things, subconsciously or not, that they want us to pay attention to. So if you'll meet older ladies, let's say late 70s, early 80s, they'll draw bigger lips than they actually have with their lipstick. They don't know why, but it's because our upper lip is our personal lip. The larger it is, the more approachable we are. Mm. Yeah.
Oh, you got me thinking. So let's expand on that, because I think people are probably wondering, I was going to ask you this, is because obviously females typically put on more makeup, do more things and all that. Does that change anything as you're looking at that, as to when they have, their eyelashes? I think about the things that they do, and like, it's a big difference between someone that has no makeup to having makeup. How does that integrate in, and you read that? The
number one plastic surgery right now is lip enhancement. And the reason why is because people want to be seen as more approachable, but they didn't know why they were doing it. Now there's a second part of that, because I actually follow, I met some anestheticians who do that kind of stuff, and I follow. What they also do, and you have this, and that's what I'm pointing out, is when they enhance their lips, they also draw that arrow in. That's called a Cupid's bow. So that's a subconscious sign that says, listen to me when I talk. So if somebody has a beard or a goatee or a mustache, I always tell people trim that up, especially if you have that arrow. Well, now if you go and look up on social media, anybody does lip enhancement, they put that arrow in. Oh. Yes. So, somebody will go, well, what if somebody's had a facelift? I wouldn't know it. But there's a great book by, it's called Psycho-Cybernetics.
Okay,
is the name of the book.
Yeah, heard it.
And he was a plastic surgeon. What he found is when he would fix something on people's face, it didn't always take because it was mentally who they are. But when we put on a suit and we feel good, we change how we go out in the world. Thus, we change how we're treated by the world. It's the same thing with faces. Like, man, if I shave off my beard, I feel like Uncle Fester. Right? So it's one of those, I don't feel confident without a beard. Yeah. But it's the same thing. So women can highlight features and people will pay more attention to it. So women used to put belladonna in their eyes centuries ago to make their pupils larger because when we're attracted to something, our pupils dilate. It was poison. They were literally poisoning their bodies, but it was to be seen as more attractive. So again, lip enhancement, lipstick. So what do we associate red lipstick with? Oh, it's sexy, right? But why is it red? So there's all these things that, you can go down rabbit holes with all this kind of stuff. But there's some women who will use rouge to make their cheeks look wider than they actually are. And cheeks tell us like how somebody is endurance-wise. Inset cheeks are like sprinters. Wide set cheeks are like marathoners. So yes.
Oh, okay. Which ones do I have on the cheeks?
You have more of the wide cheeks. You'll know when somebody's more of the inset. Right,
inset, so it'd be a little bit puffier there.
Yeah, it'd be more like the widest part of your cheeks would be right here versus right here where they are. Yeah.
I'm processing this stuff and I'm like, hold on, Brian. Like this is some really, I'm thinking about different people while I'm also thinking about myself, and hopefully everybody is listening going, okay, where am I? Where do I fit in? Does that feel like me? Does that, and as you've shared that, even the lip thing, I'm thinking, wow, that does relate. And you start going through. So far, I'm still with you. You haven't.
Well, and I love it. Again, I love skeptics because I was one. And
I'm curious.
Yes. The first face you'll ever stare at is your own. So when we were all getting certified, we all sit in front of the mirror and go, okay. And to answer your question, it's still taught to attorneys for jury consulting at some law schools. My mentor has probably taught 100, 150 people how to do it before he retired. He retired during COVID, but I'm one of less than 3 that teach it. Like on stages. There's some people that teach it in their coaching because they're teaching executives how to bond with other executives. But it's crazy. Like I'm dumbfounded that this was removed from education because the most important thing in life is relationships and people. And the fact of we're taught things that we don't use every day, but we're not taught. Like I was lucky I took psychology courses in junior high, and that was my my minor in college. So I learned body language and statement analysis, things of that nature. But why it's not taught to us on a regular basis? Everything we need comes from someone else. Why would we not want to figure people out? Yeah. And there's a lot of kudos and credibility to being introverts, and I'm not hurting anybody about that because I'm an introvert to a degree, but I'm an introverted extrovert. I want to be around people, but I'm terrified to talk to people at the same time. But by being 100% introvert, you're keeping yourself away from other people. And sometimes that story that you may need to share is what somebody else needs to hear. So that's why I wish we were taught to understand other people and ourselves better. We're taught to be good employees, but not who am I as a person.
Man, there's so much to unpack in that. I'd love for you to expand on the relationship, because for people to listen to this, I'm like, to me, it's all about relationships. And I can relate to that, like the introvert, extrovert. Like I look at some of those like kind of labels, I call them, and it's like, man, there's days I could go one way or the other. There's different people groups that I'm around that I'm like, I feel like one more than the other. And it's like when I'm around my group and my people, I always say it's like, I'm probably one of the biggest extroverts. But putting around like newer people and some of this, this is why I think this is so important, is to be able to read them and go, are these my people? How soon can I open up? Right. How do I build relationships as you do this? So somebody's listening, they're wanting to learn this. Because I know we'll talk about some of this later, but where would they start to learn this process and start to understand? Is like course, read the books and all the things you did, like listen to you speak. Like I'm just thinking, people are probably listening going, man, I want to learn this.
Right. I have virtual training, so I've got a Lightspeed course. I've got some out there. The flashcards help me the most because think about, books are good, but when we really wanted to prepare for something, what did we do? We got the flashcards.
That's right.
And so that's what I used. I would take a flashcard with me and I'd just go to the airport or this coffee place and be like, who has it? And then once I found somebody with it, I was like, what does it mean again? And then I'd flip it over and look at the other side. That's how I use the flashcards. Courses are good. I've got coaching and then speaking. The challenge with speaking is you can only get in front of somebody for an hour or so. and then you hope they use it. So I put up like a cheat sheet. Like I give away a cheat sheet of the eyebrow height and eyebrow shapes because I want people to go out and use it and see it. Because if the worst thing you do is make someone else feel seen and heard, that's a game changer this day and age, especially after people, not only just the period of time where we literally lived in isolation, people are very isolated because we see everybody's best life on social media. One of the posts that I get the most attention for wasn't about what I teach. It was talking about what are my thoughts after 1 year of being fired. And I was with a company for 21 and a half years. And here's my assumption of what happened. A TikTok video went viral, and I did everything as SubtleSkills, not as me, because I wanted to keep it hidden. And TikTok changed a metric over Thanksgiving. And all of a sudden, people were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, this isn't going to go well." And the next week, I was fired. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I lived in fear of being fired for so long. And then when I was fired, it wasn't that bad. And I was very unhappy, and that was my own doing. I could have left, but I got into that zone of comfort. I made good money. I had golden handcuffs. I'm like, well, I put in this much time. I get 6 weeks of vacation. But I was in rooms I didn't want to be in. Now I'm in rooms like this where I want to be here. I'm here for 3 days, and I'm doing 4 different events of, podcasts or meeting with people, whatever, because I want to do it versus, oh, God, I got to go to another one. And so that's a big thing is when you learn about yourself, you learn, well, what am I doing by default? Are you familiar with NLP at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What are the filters that I'm living that somebody else gave me versus the ones I want? And that's the whole thing. We're taught, go to school, get a job, retire, die. And that's about it. It's very rarely like, if you won't say, hey, I want to join a fantasy football league, everybody's like, yes, go for it. And you go, hey, I'm going to go to a seminar to learn more about myself. Why? What's wrong? It's a really weird society.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
When you think about it. I'd love for you to expand on it because I think people are probably thinking, okay, dude, how did you overcome? And I knew some of your story, and I'm glad you brought it up. But being at a company that long, I had some similar things. I wasn't there that long, but like opportunities to where it was like I didn't know that was going to be the next opportunity. But you get fired, or your job's eliminated, and you go the route. I think there's a lot of people out there that are unhappy and unfulfilled.
Oh yes.
You just look at social and you watch it today. Like I just believe that's what's happening, and they're probably in that spot. Like, okay, Brian, like help me. I'm wanting to make this change proactively versus reactively.
Well, I'll tell you the number one thing I tell everybody, it doesn't matter what company, what industry, where you're at, you need to have a side hobby or passion. Now, it can be a side job. I spoke for free all the time when I was employed because I made good money. And I never wanted it to be a conflict of interest, so I took vacation days from work. I spoke for free, so it was never the day I got fired, I was like, I gave myself a day to be mad and a day to move on. And was it easy? No, I cashed out a 401k and lived off of it for a year. And there's still times where financially it's a struggle because being a speaker, the minute you're off stage, you're unemployed. Right? So, but the happiness on a daily level is what you have to focus on. And we were raised to, you've got to have the best job at the best company and all these things. And when I say this, it's not out of disrespect. It's just the reality of where things are. No company cares about you. And no person cares about the company like we think and we were raised to. Because we were raised in a day and age where there were pensions. I gave you X amount of my life. You took care of me for the rest of my life. The minute we went to a 401k where it's like, hey, we'll help you, but you're really on your own, is where things change. And now you look at any industry and you'll make more money by job hopping to another company versus getting a raise internally. And I did that for years. I went 9 different promotions with the company I was at. I went from help desk to regional vice president of sales. And I was lucky that some of those were good financial jumps. But when I was on help desk, I went from this one to this one, I got a small bump. But if they brought in somebody who left and came back, they would give them more. And that's the way a lot of companies work is it's strange. We value somebody coming from the outside more than we do our own people. And I realize they go, well, we don't want to give them too much of a jump. But if they were coming from somewhere else, you would. So why not do that? Yeah.
God, so fundamental. The last few years in the mortgage space has been that, where the sign-on bonuses have been absolutely absurd.
Yes.
And people have said, well, you know what, I'm just going to go over there because I'm going to get this. And of course, with the market downturn after COVID, it's been one where I've never seen it in my 20 years this rampant, where people jumped. And your point, I hope people are listening to that is, especially leaders, is that something I know we're recreating at Revolution?
Oh, yes.
How do we give people a model and treat them as they're here so well that they're able to earn it? They don't have to job hop, because that has become our industry of it's less than 3 years is the average tenure for a top producer.
Yes.
And all that tells me is wasn't so much they're frustrated at their company.
Right.
They were able to get more money or a title or something to go somewhere else.
Here's another one too. Are you treating all of your employees exactly the same, or are you treating them as individuals? So we mentioned earlier, if they're more auditory, give them verbal compliments. Hey, good job. You've got this line. So we talked about this earlier. So this is the verbal affirmation line. People who want that sincere verbal compliments go a long way. So it's not always about title and pay.
Right.
It's about what makes that person feel seen and heard. If you think about it, when you don't feel like a number, like I worked for a smaller company before we got bought by a larger company. In that smaller company, I felt like I was a key cog in it. And then when I went to a larger corporation, you're one of thousands of employees, and you don't feel that anymore. If you can make people feel important for what they do, and legitimately, don't blow smoke, because we can all tell when somebody's BSing us.
That's right.
But if you focus on, hey, I really appreciate this thing that you did, and you make them feel seen and heard. Or, sometimes it can be an extra vacation day. It can be little things. Not everything has to be a monetary jump. But if somebody's doing a good job and you go, oh, we're only going to give you 5%, but they know that somebody else just came in for 20% more, it's one of those things of, well, then why should I stay here? Mm-hmm. So we kind of do it to ourselves over time.
I love that you're going down this route, because I didn't expect us to talk about it, but I'm thinking about that recognition in your current company, the people that are there, any leaders listening to this or running real estate teams, mortgage teams, to go back and look at their current team, break some of that down for us a little bit as we've gone through some of the facial features to look for.
Right.
And let's tie that into how you would recognize each of those individuals. So what they can look for, because this is big.
Sure. So let's go with eyebrows type before. If somebody's got straight eyebrows, get straight to the point with them. Don't go on and on. If they've got angled eyebrows, let them be involved in some of the processes. Invite them to do additional things as well. If they've got rounded eyebrows, then talk about how they're helping the other people, their customers, their coworkers. Hey, I really appreciate what you did with Justin when you were helping things out, because that's what that person enjoys doing, right? So I don't go, hey, good job. I'm so, I'm thankful for what you do. I say, you know what, the impact you had and what it's done for Justin, for somebody with a rounded eyebrow, that makes them happy. This little line here is the verbal affirmation line. So sincere verbal compliments. Hey, I really appreciate what you did on this specific deal. Not, hey, good job. Mm-hmm. And something that is just, this is an industry as a whole, no matter what you're doing, celebrate every single win. Too often they're like, hey, good job. Now what's next in the pipeline? What else are you going to do? Like, take an actual minute to celebrate things. And that's what has kind of gone away. It's human nature that we run faster from pain than towards pleasure. Mm-hmm. But you have to let people sit in the wins, because we're in a very negative society. You turn on every news channel, anything like that, and people want just to feel seen, heard, appreciated. So when they win, celebrate that. We talked about earlier, eyes and ears. So larger ears, smaller eyes, auditory people. Send them a voicemail of what you appreciate about them. So Janine Driver, a bi-language expert. Yeah. So we're friends. If I send her regular text or written text, she won't respond for days. Send her a voice text or a video text, she's on it. So I'm speaking her language, adjusting, because I'm visual. I want to send a regular text. Mm-hmm. But if I send her, I FaceTime with her more than I do half my family, because that's how she likes to talk.
Sure.
So I'm making the adjustment to try and speak to her in her language. Now, if she had larger eyes and smaller ears, then I would send a text, send an email. You did a great job today. I really appreciate what you did. A simple text would be something that's in there. If it's like here, you have the wide area here, kinesthetic, give them an extra day off. Hey, you know what? You've earned this day off. And I know there's a lot of HR regulations and things, but sometimes you got to figure out, you can't make something that works for everyone. That's right. Find little things to do it to make them feel seen and heard. If it's something that's kinesthetic, give them something that they can play with. Give them a pen or something they can write with.
Yeah.
If they're visual, give them a book. If they're auditory, give them audible credits. I mean, you can do all these little things, but part of your job as a leader is to investigate and learn about your people, not just how many kids or dogs or who are they married or divorced. And I know it's that fine line of HR and everything else, but you have to know your people. Yeah. What's going on in their life? What's happening? Because, and let me bring up one. This is more for if you have teams that are on remote Zoom. Mm-hmm. So when you see a lot of white under somebody's pupil, that's somebody who's under stress constantly. So if you see that too often, then you need to say, hey, are you doing okay? Or, hey, how's everything going? That may save someone's life. You never know what people are going through. So when you see the white under their eyes a lot, then you just think they're under stress. So it's the white, not the eyelid, but just the white underneath it.
Yeah.
That's literally when we're stressed, we make that sign. So if you see that a lot, you can go, Hey, how's everything going? You don't have to say you look this way or it seems this way. Just how's everything going? That may be the question that they needed to get something off their chest.
Wow. Okay. So the white would be just right underneath?
Yeah. So like if like to over exaggerate, but if you see white like this under the eye, that's a sign of stress.
Okay.
Yeah. White over the eye, we say they're over their limit. That's potential violence.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why you remember the don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. That's because they were sitting like this, waiting for violence. So we talk about faces in our everyday language all the time. Like I could sit here and go down like the rabbit hole. When we say take one on the chin, chins talk about how we handle criticism and adversity. So if you have an employee who has a small chin, you need to use the sandwich technique. And I know some people poo-poo on it, but smaller chins, when you give them feedback, they hear it as though you're screaming. And I understand because I used to have a smaller chin than I have now. And that's the other thing. There's 43 muscles in the face. I used to say 42 and I realized I was wrong. It was 43. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. So our faces are constantly changing over time. Yes, it's 60% genetics, but from the minute we're born, epigenetics comes into play. And we start making faces. And that's why your parents said, don't make that face or it'll get stuck that way.
Yes.
There's some truth to that.
Oh, man. You dropped some of those. I'm like, how many times have we heard these? They call them cliches, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they're legit. And take one on the chin. I'm thinking about that. Don't make that face. And like, we would joke when people try to cross their eyes or different things. Like, no.
Yes.
Don't do these things.
Well, on a morbid sense, think about when somebody has a stroke or if you see an open casket funeral. When all that muscle tension's gone, we don't recognize the person. It's the same thing. If somebody leaves a bad work environment, a bad relationship, and we're like, you look like a new person, it's because they started smiling again. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that before. I remember leaving one of the roles I was in, and my wife was like, was it any day that ends in day?
Yeah.
Because it could be a bad day that day. I'm like, you don't realize how stressed you look. And you look at those pictures during that season.
Yes.
And you can start to see some of these things you're sharing. I'm thinking, man, I've seen these in my own life of what's there. So it's good, one, to recognize yourself, but two, I was also thinking about when you said, do this with your team.
Yes.
What a gift. You don't have to do it one time.
Right.
Right? Like go through, learn who they are, the closest people you work with. You know, we have several hundred people at our company. So it's like, okay, who are the people I interact with the most that I need to do this with? And I can start to make this almost, I think about like profile for them.
Yes.
How can I interact with them better with the sense of, and I'm not going to go tell them, hey, by the way, I just learned this new technique in class. Brian taught me all these things. Would you introduce this to anybody as you start to learn about it? Or is this, okay, that's what I wonder is like, how does this start to?
If people have, like, let's say somebody comes in and they're like, I just can't figure this person out. You can go, hey, let's sit down and take a look at them. And then you can teach them how to do it. So that's the power is if you're teaching them a skill, they're less nervous about you looking at them. The other thing that people always worry about, are you constantly doing it? No, I have to want to do it. So when I walk up and I see people, I want to genuinely meet you. But then if my ADD starts kicking in and I start thinking, I go, okay, pick something else on their face, that keeps me focused on you instead of what else is going on in the room.
Yeah. I wonder if you walk into a room and you see somebody and you go, hold on, let me do.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like the AI facial recognition is like Brian's brain.
Some days I do that because I want to figure out how do I speak to that person. Other days I'm just genuinely here for the interaction. So it just depends on what's the goal of, if I'm at a networking event, which by the way, this one has nothing to do with faces. Stop asking people what they do because if they hate their job, they now subconsciously hate you. If you want to really get to know somebody, say, hey, now that we can travel again, where's your next vacation? Because people show up to work, but people plan their vacation.
Yeah.
And you'll learn way more about somebody from that than you will anything else.
Yeah. That's not a good question. I always, we'd laugh about Renee and talk about this. Is like, just because somebody asks you a bad question does not mean you have to continue this and give them a bad answer as you go through. And I always think, man, how many times are we asked bad questions as we go through? What would you ask somebody as you go to a lot of these cool events?
Right.
What are the ways that you engage and are memorable and all? Because I noticed this, like people love to be around you, by the way.
Yeah,
like it's just one of those energies. Like I always love when I see you, I'm like, there's Brian. And you stop. Like, how do you become that person?
Genuine desire to be in the room is number one. And learning to appreciate things about people. So for example, when I saw you at Renee's event, what did I comment on? Where are you sitting? Front row, so you can be there to support your friend. Paying attention to people, it's not that hard. It's not thinking about you for a minute and actually focusing on what can I appreciate about the other person. So I sent you that on DM. I'm like, you know what? The fact that you're always sitting front and center to support your friends, you were sitting up front at Ken's event. That's the kind of person you are, and that's something I appreciate. Just genuine curiosity about people. You'll find that in a lot of introverts, because when we're focused on you, we're not thinking about us. And you've learned this as well as I did. Well, you probably know this, but for your audience, most of the people who are on stage are introverts. And it's because they get up because they have a message to share, and you can tell who they are versus the ones who are like, look at me, look at me. We know who the showboats are, and we know who's there out of their own comfort zone to help other people. And that's a lot of people that we know, that come out and will rock a stage and have to go back and go, and sit down.
It's like they just did a race or a workout.
Exactly.
That's the best ones, is they're that invested. I always, tell my kids before a game, like those nervous energy, butterflies, whatever you want to call them, like that means you care.
Yes.
As you're there and you go through. Let's talk about this. I'm going to shift some gears because we brought the speaking earlier, and you speak on a lot of cool stages. People that are wanting to speak and all that, like you have your niche and all that, but somebody's thinking, okay, Brian, how have you gotten on stages? Any advice for them as to how do they take this message and story they may have and go, man, I want to go speak more?
I'm going to answer one on your previous one, then I'll come to this one too. The other way that I stand out is you have to have something that makes you stand out. So I'm always in a vest when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
And now when I go places, people come seek me out because they recognize that I wear a vest. That's why you'll always see me. That was started by fluke accident. I'm too hot to wear jackets all the time. And so I started wearing vests because you get credit for being dressed up, but it became my brand. And that's even when I was in corporate America, because I'd walk in, I'd take my jacket off, I had on the vest, I still looked dressed up. But then I could also adjust to the room. So that if I walked in there in t-shirts like we are today, I would just roll up my sleeves. And that way I look more like them than I would standing in full suit and they're wearing polos, right? That's number one. So have something about you that stands out. So if you look, most people have something that they're known for when they're up on stage. Maybe it's a certain color, maybe it's a certain suit. Renee's known for his jackets, right? His blazers. There's a guy named Larry who wears a red hat every event he goes to. So people will seek him and go, that's Larry. Yeah. And it makes people feel like they know you, so they'll come up and talk to you. Now, how did I get on stages? Being in the right rooms that I paid to be in. So my very first stage ever was Bradley's event in 2021. Janine Driver, so Janine came in and taught a class in Brad's mastermind that I'm still in to this day, 5 years later. We're coming up on 5 years in April. And Janine was one of the ones, and I was like, man, she was just amazing. And I'd never met her, but funny enough, I had her book at home, and then when I was married, we lived in Arizona for 90 days. My wife was on a project, and I was looking on Barnes & Noble, and there's this body language book. It's about your own body language, and it's called You Say More Than You Think. And I'm like, oh, that's a good book. I'm going to pick it up. And it was Janine's book, and then Brad had her on. She's just amazing.
Phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. And Jenna, who works with Brad, said, you know what? You and Janine need to meet. And so I met Janine. She introduced us, and I explained what I do and how it complements body language. So it doesn't compete. So Janine and I are working on a course called Read the Face, Read the Room, the proactive and reactive side of sales. Because how can you prepare then when you're in the room, what body language should you look out for? Well, so Janine and I became friends. I was sharing with you earlier. She sent me people's pictures, and I'd say, like, this is the good, this is the bad. And I called Janine. I said, I really want to go to this event. I think I'm going to buy this certain ticket. She goes, hold on one second. She hung up the phone. She called me back. She goes, you're not going to go as an attendee. You're going as a speaker. She called Brad and said, I'm giving up 15 minutes of my time because I believe in Brian. And let me tell you, I sucked the first day I was there. I came out. I didn't know how to talk. I was like, my microphone was shaking and everything else. But Janine Driver gave me my first stage. So it was Janine requesting it and Brad giving it to me. So when people ask, like, why am I such a fanboy of Brad's? Him and Janine changed my life. Now Mac changed my life by teaching me the skill. And I'd always wanted to speak when I would do that. I mentioned to you earlier, those pro demo teams. Like, I loved going, meeting people and traveling. On a date in 2012, I was asked, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You're in this job now. I said, I want to get paid to travel the world and teach people something. And I'm getting to do that now. Then I joined I met a guy named Joe Ingram, and I was on Joe's podcast. He had on Steve, and I told Steve the same advice I gave to Jim. I'm like, trim your mustache if you want to be seen as more approachable. And Steve's answer, you think I care? I'm like, okay, then he hates me. But I followed up with him, and I sent him a PowerPoint. And I said, hey, this is the reason why I was telling you this. This is what our lips say about us. And he says, you want to be on my podcast? I'm like, yeah. And then I was on his podcast. He goes, you want to come to my event? I go, oh, yeah. And that was my second stage I ever spoke on. And then I hired, once I knew this is what I wanted to do, what do? You hire a coach. I hired Steve as my speaking coach. Because Brad doesn't offer any coaching, you can just be in his mastermind. But Steve, basically, he was awesome because I wanted to hire someone who was doing what I wanted to do, not theory.
That's right.
And I had a great coach before that was out of Australia who was really good in marketing and things that I wasn't ready for yet. Like, if he was in my life now, I would have been able to utilize him so much better. Yeah. But Steve was on stages, and so I was back in the green room with people with Steve. And so that's what really changed my life, is hiring a coach who does the things that you say. What I also do is every event I'll buy a ticket. It may not be the VIP ticket, but I will always show up at someone's event, even if I can only come for a little bit of time. So when I saw you at Ken's event, I couldn't go the entire time, but I bought a ticket so I can show up, support, network, and then leave, because I'm always going to learn something new. It's like buying a book.
That's right.
One good page, one good chapter is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
Same thing. I was at an event, or there was an event in Dallas I bought a ticket to, ran into Brad, ended up in the green room talking to all the other speakers that are there. So it's not, people go, well, I can't afford the VIP things. If you can't afford it, go, because you need to pay for proximity, and those front seats are worth the price of admission. But if you don't have that now, still show support. The mistake that a lot of people make is they want everything for free. Oh, well, I know that person, so they should just let me in for free. No, at least buy the smallest ticket and show up.
Yeah.
Because then you're still supporting that person.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Like, when we were here in October, Coach Burt was one of the speakers that was here. I signed up for a thing because my daughter had her tonsils out last week, and Coach was having something on Thursday and Friday. I'm like, well, I'll just listen in while she's in surgery and all that. And I found out on Wednesday he was going to be in Dallas. I bought a ticket to that to go. Could I have called him up and said, hey, I just want to come and see your event? I probably could have, but that's not the right thing to do. No. Buy a ticket. Show up. Yeah.
So good. If I had the Brad honor to him, the dropping bombs buzzer right there, I would drop that, because that is like literally gold. People will listen to this and it'll fly by. I hope it doesn't, because what I've found is listening to your story and seeing what you just shared is literally the blueprint. Guys, like, start where you are. You might have that one friend that introduces you and gives you one shot.
Yes.
And it's going to happen before you're ready.
Yes.
Just be prepared.
Yes.
That's just the way it goes. You're never going to be fully prepared for it. And I love how you continue to show up at your friends' events. I noticed that about you. And I will tell you, that attracts you to other people.
Yes.
Because of all of us that go to events and do those, like, we're very selective about where we spend our time, our money, and our resources.
Yes.
But I do pay attention to who else is paying attention.
Yes.
Where are they investing? And I will tell you, some people may take offense to this, but if you're always in the general admission, you're always out drinking, and you're always doing those things, not my person.
Right.
If you're near the front, you're paying attention, you're always consistent, you're going to the events, you're doing those things.
Right.
That proximity is the power of what have. So I just want to tell you, man, shout out to you, because that has built your brand to where now people in all these circles too, by the way, they're a lot closer than you think. You're like, oh, I'm over in this group, or I'm with that person. It's the same winners.
It is.
Right?
Yes.
And you keep showing up. Why do you keep going now, even though you've had some success and you are on stages? Why do you keep going to these events?
Because there's always something new to learn. The worst thing we can do is stay stagnant, and you're into physical fitness, because I told you this for everybody who's listening. I told him one day, sometimes I'll screenshot his workouts, because if I'm at home and I can't work out, I'm like, I'm going to just do what he does at Iron Tribe. Is that what
Iron Tribe.
So I'll screenshot those. I'm like, if I have to work out at home, I'm going to copy Brian's, because you're in good shape. Well, you don't go, okay, well, I worked out last month, I'm good for the rest of my life. And that's the crazy part. I talked about this earlier. I realized a change that I'm wired different than some of my friends, because they're into fantasy football and they're into a lot of things. And I'll go to any event. You give me a ticket, let's go. I'm all about the experience. But I would rather be in a room learning from other people than watching other people play a sport. Yeah. And that's just kind of the way I'm wired. Yeah. I didn't grow up with a dad that was really big into sports. I played soccer when I was young. I played till high school. They didn't have a high school team. So I played, and then I kind of gave up, and I went and worked, and I worked in all kinds of jobs. But I always want to keep learning. I look like a hoarder with the amount of books that I have, because a lot of events we go to, like, do you know Greg Reed?
Oh, I know who he is.
Yeah. Whenever you go, they have all the authors bring in their books, and you get copies. So I have stacks and stacks of books. I look like a hoarder, because I'm like, well, I'll get to that one eventually. Meanwhile, I'm still buying new ones off Amazon. But that's just, to me, why stop ever learning? There's always something new you can have. I listen to podcasts, and I listen to Audible. I can't tell you what's popular on the radio except for what my daughter asked me to play in the car. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I always found, like, the leaders are readers.
Yes.
Cliche people have. I'm like, true leaders and people that are doing that, they do read. And
yes.
So, man, kudos to you, because if anybody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to do these things. Like, Brian, you just laid out the blueprint. Here's the actions. Go to this, go to this, go to this. If you need help, reach out to one of us, because we will tell you which events are near your city, which ones are coming, and all that. If you feel like, well, I don't know where to go or what to do next, gladly we'll help you, because I know you speak at a lot of these, and I still go. I don't speak quite as much, but I still go, and I can tell you, if this is what you want, these are your options to get you in the room.
Well, you know what I do in my newsletter? That's another skill I'm improving in 2024, is I say, these are events I'm either speaking at or attending. Because if I think it's worth putting money in and attending that, then why not share it with other people? I get nothing out of it. I'm not putting my link up. I'm just saying, I plan to go with this because I think it's worth the money. And one other tip that I forgot to bring out, when I go somewhere, if I think there's somebody of value that person can bring, I invite that person. So for example, tomorrow when I'm speaking at Jim's event, I invited somebody who just moved back here, who's a speaker, because I thought, I think she lives here. And I reached out. She's like, yeah, I just moved back. I'm like, well, come to the event.
Yes.
And meet Jim. So that's the other thing is, don't make it just about you. Introduce other people to each other. Yeah. Amberly lives in Dallas. So when somebody pops up and says, I need a strong female businesswoman, I'm like, do you know Amberly? And I try to create those introductions.
Yes.
I gain nothing of it other than knowing I'm putting two good people together, that will flourish for them. And that makes me happy too.
We're on the same page with that. It's always, when they ask, like, okay, how did you get some of these relationships you have? I always say, be a super connector.
Yes.
And if you haven't really learned, like, dig into that, because that to me just became so easy. I'm like, well, you need this or want this, or I think this would be a good match, to your point of like something triggers. So act immediately, send them the joint texts, send the DMs together, whatever you want to do there, but take action. And when you connect people, they're always like, hey, you remember who connected us?
Yeah.
Forever you will be the person that connected them together.
One last one, and I know we've been on for a while, but every time I'm asked to speak at an event, the first thing I do is I ask, who are the other speakers? And I add them on social media. And I said, hey, I'm going to be speaking to as well. I want to get to know you. Because people just show up and they go, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, why don't we get to know each other ahead of time?
Yes.
And then I can follow their content, and I know what to talk about with them. I know what their likes are. Like, I watched his TED Talk, so I have something to talk about.
Yeah.
It's just doing those little things to understand others.
Yeah. Justin and I talked about that too when I was on his show before this, and it was one of those, he was asking, so I said, man, the most prepared still wins, right?
Yes.
And so I love that you do that. And I would say for anybody out there, if you get an opportunity to speak or you get an opportunity to go to a conference, any of those areas, connect before you go, because then when you're there, then you can start using these skills that you learned today.
Yes.
And then afterwards you go, these are my people I want to follow up with. These are maybe not the people today, but this is my group.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I need to land the plane because I know we could talk for a while.
Well, I'll just have to come back.
Dude, you're going to come back, and we're gonna do things together, which I know. I love being in the same rooms with you, and I'm just honored that you joined, because it's one of those I get excited and curious, because I always look for guests. Selfishly, I'm just going to be honest on this. Like, I love to learn from people.
Yeah.
And I want great guests, because then I know, well, if I'm learning and curious about what you're doing, I know other people will benefit.
100%.
So they'll share. Where can people find you? We'll put all the links in there, but just to make sure if they're listening to this audible.
Sure. SubtleSkills everywhere, basically. So SUBTLE skills. I learned a lot of people can't spell subtle, so I also bought Decode the Face. Yeah, because nobody can spell my last name or say it, Galke. And then I realized subtle is apparently very difficult to spell.
Well, you got it. You're crushing it. Thank you for just dropping wisdom and
having
truth and your story. I think people are going to relate to this. I know there's been seasons of my life where I go, yep, I've been through that. And these are the tools I always think about. If you were to lose your job or you were to want to go do something different, what are the skills and the tools that you can take with you to be successful in that next endeavor? Yeah. And this is one of them. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Guys, Brian Galke dropping massive bombs today. We'll leave that in there. And I will tell you this is, I always look for people, one, that stand that test of core values, character, and all that. And you can listen to Brian's story of what he has shared and how he shows up to events. And if you haven't been to an event with him, you'll quickly realize when you do in the future, you need to be at these events. You need to connect up with him, how he's built his relationships. But learning the art of decoding the face and understanding what this all means, this can be a superpower for you. This can be your competitive edge in your marketplace. And so you could hear what Brian does. You can tell several competitive edges that I could pick up today and go, man, that's what makes him different and unique and how he's winning. So hopefully today you got those. Let us know. Questions, DMs, we always appreciate that. Leave us a review, as that helps us know how we're doing. And I love to be on great guests like Brian, because it's things that I personally want to learn. And I also believe it's things that you need to learn out there, and you probably will as well. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we've been growing, which is phenomenal. And I will tell you guys, my biggest ask is the show's free. just share it with people that you think would find value. That's how we've grown downloads and the followers and all the stuff there. And it is about impact. As I believe the shows and the time we spend, we curate the guests that come on to make sure they add value for you. So share it with somebody you care about. Go learn some of these things and let us know how it's working for you. Until then, go out there, do something great, learn something new, and be an asset to those that you care about. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.